The Obama administration judging the judge in an immigration case. Judge Andrew Hanen, a district judge in Brownsville, Texas. He's hearing a challenge to President Obama's executive action when it comes to immigration. That's the order that would defer deportations for scores of people. Justice Department saying the judge, he is overstepping his authority, and not with a little step here, he's leapfrogging it. Now, this is how the Times describes it. As a penalty, the judge ordered government lawyers practicing in the 26 states involved in the case to take ethics courses. He also barred some from even appearing in his court, and the immigration official handling the president's program is also upset with the judge for the info that he is requesting, saying the judge's demand for a list of about 50,000 immigrants with 3-year deferrals living in the 26 states would be a, quote, unprecedented breach of the confidentiality of immigration applications. Mayo, there's one thing with the judge getting mad, and apparently some of the submissions from the attorneys either were incomplete or misrepresentative, okay? But to demand they go and take ethics classes, barring them from the courtroom, and then asking for all these documents, including people who have done nothing wrong, to be publicized, there's got to be a line here. Where's the judge? I haven't heard of this. Maybe you guys do all the time.
Well, I think Mr. Trump would say he's a hater. Okay, but when you stop and think about it, to suggest that every time there's a breach of duty, even if it clearly is a breach of duty, and to suggest that those lawyers can't appear in front of the court and that they have to go back for ethics courses, you'd lose probably half of the people that practice law across the board. They just would be in ethics courses 24 hours a day. So every time you didn't get exculpatory information, and by the way, when we're in criminal court, somehow those proclamations don't seem to happen. No one rules that you didn't get the discovery, so this assistant district attorney or AUSA can't come to court. Clearly there's an agenda here. It's a political issue. It ought not be. I don't see how you can ever reasonably, and I don't believe the judge even actually expects to get the documentation that he's suggesting he should have.
Well, this thing would take more than 5 years to get this
Absolutely.
stuff. I mean,
You know, Rich, I've heard this before. You know, you have the Supreme Court of the United States, you have the circuits, courts of appeals, and yet how many times have we heard that district court judges have more power in this country?
why is that?
You know, because district court judge tells the President of the United States, you got to be here, you got to be there. Tells DoJ, you have to do this, you have to do it. I think that you'll see him pull back on this because it's just such a gargantuan task, but he's sending a message. You know,
Who
he's
does the district judge report to?
appointed for life, and
Well,
you have the Circuit Court of Appeals that will review any order a district court judge makes. But you know, when we're in court and district court judge tells the government, you're going to do this, you're going to do it tomorrow by 5 o'clock, it gets done. The judge is mad. The judge is mad. During the pendency of this litigation, he thought that it was improper for the government not to tell him that while an injunction was being litigated, they were granting the deferrals to over 100,000 people.
And it wasn't just one mistake. I mean, it was a systematic misrepresentation of the number and types of people subject to this litigation and the injunction order. Now, bear in mind, the merits of the case are currently before the U.S. Supreme Court.
Yep.
So this judge who has already issued the injunction, his injunction has been upheld by the appeals court, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit. So the Fifth Circuit, I mean, make no mistake, this is a federalism issue, and the Fifth Circuit is generally a very conservative circuit, a hotbed of federalist theory. So they're knocking heads quite straight on with the Obama administration. Now, just because the appeals court upheld the injunction doesn't mean that they'll uphold this sanctions order. They'll uphold some sanctions order, but this seems
Well,
too
but see, the judge had an opportunity to really basically do most of what he was suggesting, but he just really, the overreach was tremendous. And if he had simply targeted the actual assistant U.S. attorneys that are responsible, then you can really make your point. And at that point, there's very little anyone could say in terms of criticism.
To cast that brush across the entire DOJ, I mean, this order applies to attorneys that have nothing to do with the case.
Before him,
Right.
yeah,
I
people.
mean,
Or any of these
that's
things,
not
right.
right.
But listen, there's rampant prosecutorial, and this is not a criminal case, let's be clear, but there's rampant prosecutorial misconduct across the DOJ in political corruption prosecutions across the country. The Ted Stevens case in Alaska immediately springs to mind, and there were months and months of sanctions litigation and internal investigations. They never, ever get wrapped on the wrist seriously for misconduct in criminal cases. So while this order seems excessive, particularly in a civil case and politically motivated, it's high time that the DOJ is called to account for its own excesses.
But you know what? To the person who doesn't have to live through this, Doug, whenever you hear somebody saying, I'm sending you all to ethics classes and the rest, it just screams the arrogance and unchecked power. It just feels...
Well, whose arrogance and unchecked power?
Well, in the case of this judge, that he's going to make some proclamation impacting 50,000 people
uses
here.
arrogance and unchecked power,
People think of
and
the
he's checking it.
The Department of Justice, and they're thinking about it. It is a big organization, but it has to be a small organization. It has to communicate with each other. They have to act in a coordinated way. If the judge is making an order, whether it's in Texas, he has to know that his order is being heard throughout the Department of Justice.
And listen, they
and what he's
represent
saying
the
is,
U.S. government.
You can't,
They have a higher
you
standard.
can't say, I don't know what's going on in another part of my
That's
office.
correct.
He's saying, you know,
That
if
is
the right hand has to know what the left hand is
Correct.
doing. That's what he's
And
saying.
they have a
That's not
higher
even- but there is
standard
no
than private
excusing.
lawyers.
That's
There's no
not, I
excuse
didn't
for
know
it.
what was going on. They systematically
Made misrepresentations about
omitted
facts at the
that
core
were
of the
so
litigation.
germane. So he's got a right to be that upset.
But he's impacting, and he's also going after the wrong people, including innocent people here who aren't even involved
That's
in the
not gonna
case,
happen, right?
not even on the council side, but also some of the
So maybe
people.
he's doing it for the right reasons, because maybe he understands he's going to lose here, but ultimately it sends a message to the Department of Justice
You
that, you
know,
know
I can't
what,
figure you
change
guys
the
out.
way you're...
I figure you should be like a lunatic judge, but instead, you know, there's a little bit of sympathy for the madman.
It's too excessive, but there's a ramp. We talked about this in the Trump context. Can you look into things that he's done in other cases? There is a rampant pattern of national misconduct among the DOJ, mostly in criminal cases, not this civil case, that is swept under the rug, and he's calling
Let's
attention
be clear.
to it.
No one's suggesting people going too hard after the Donald here, at least at this side of the table. Okay, coming up next. Should the parents face charges after their kid got into that gorilla enclosure and was dragged by a 450-pound animal? Well, that's what cops and prosecutors in Cincinnati are deciding right now as they investigate. And now there's word the family is contemplating whether or not to sue the zoo. I've had more water cooler arguments about this topic than in recent memory. We'll let the table weigh in after this.